And we are recording. And welcome to you, Stef, and thanks for joining me and the people who are going to view this at some point.
Hi, Esben. It's an absolute pleasure. It's lovely to see you again.
Yeah, you too.
Yeah.
So, the reason that I call this, the title is going to be creativity. And it's probably going to be another view of creativity than most people are used to.
Mm-hmm.
I remember before I came into the principles / inside out understanding, or what people want to call it, I thought creativity was something to cultivate, that you have to do some practice and techniques in order to get into a creative state of mind. And I'm really interested in hearing your journey with creativity. How has it been looking for you in the past, and how does it look for you now? How is it looking for you now?
That's a really cool question. So, for the past 40 plus years, I've been a musician. Okay, so I became a musician, a drummer, when I was about 13, something like that. And I really enjoyed playing. You know, when I came to playing, I had some lessons, and then I joined a band, and I really loved playing. And it seemed to me like, for me, playing was where I was creative. You know, that was my comfortable place. And everywhere else in my life was kind of a bit of a disaster. So I would really spend as much time playing as I could. And I remember, well, it still happens now when I get the chance to play, is that there's a state that sometimes I can get into, where in the process of performing, either for an audience or in the process of creating a new part for a song, I can get really lost in the moment. Where everything flows perfectly, and ideas come, and I can be so engaged with what I'm doing that I can almost, it's like I'm watching myself do things that I didn't think I could do. You know, it's that it's that amazing to watch when you're watching yourself in the middle of being engaged in something really creative like that. So I always knew that this was my place. You know, this was my comfort zone. And I would watch other people who could, you know, sort of write books, and who could be artists and paint, and I would be quite envious, because I would think, well, if only I could do that. I would love to do that, but I'm not creative, not in that way. You know, the place where I'm creative is you know, sort of behind a drum kit. And so I had a relationship with creativity where I thought exactly the same as you, that there are some people that are more creative than others. There are things that I'm capable of creating, but there are so many other things that I can't. And that felt quite limiting to me, in my life, my whole life, for a long, long time. I would be like a person at a shop window who was with their nose pressed up against the window saying, "Oh, I wish I could do that," or "I wish I could do that," and I guess when I came to the principles, when I came to the understanding of the three principles, my relationship to the idea of creativity changed quite a lot. So I began to see that having an understanding of the principle of thought meant that the principle of thought is all about creativity. It's all it does. We take the energy from the formless, energy behind life, and through thought we bring something into form. And what I saw was that capacity that we have is who we are. That's all we do. In every moment of every day, we are creating something. We're creating our experience of life in every moment of every day, and it's never the same twice. It always changes from moment to moment. We're having creative ideas about what we want to create in our world. We're having creative ideas about what we want to have for dinner. We're having creative ideas about creating a shopping list for what we want for dinner. So my idea of creativity went from, okay, so I need to create a piece of music or a piece of art, to, well, what if creativity is our way of being in the world? How does that change things? What if mind, universal mind, or life is breathing us, if it's beating our hearts, if it's thinking us, then it's not me that's doing the creating. It's not me that has to think of the ideas and make sure they work and make sure they happen. It's more about allowing life to create through us. It's about allowing that process to happen without us getting in the way with our personal thinking.
Mm.
So there's a quote by John Lennon that said something like, every child is an artist until somebody tells them that they're not. And that feels true for me, because what we do is we think of some kind of, I have clients who come to me and they want to write poetry or they want to paint, and they'll say to me, "Oh, I get these ideas, and then I look at them, and I don't think they're very good, and I don't want people to see them, so I throw them away." So what if we take us out of it? What if we take our personal self out of it and just allow whatever comes through to come through, and we write it down or we play it, and then we mess with it until it's a bit better, and then we mess with it a little bit more until it's a bit better, and then we reach a point where it's done. Whether we're kind of completely happy with it or not, we've created this, whatever it is. It seems to me, and I don't know what you think, but it seems to me that what we do is we think about, we want to create something, and then what we do is we think of all the reasons why it's not good enough. And what we do is we kind of strangle the idea before it's allowed to come out, before it's allowed to germinate, before it's allowed to kind of flower. Because we have this idea of our personal self somehow being, either we judge ourselves or we worry about other people judging us, So what if our role is just to allow whatever it is to come through and play with it and have fun with it until it's finished, and then we just allow it to go out into the world, and we don't have any opinion about what other people say about it. It seems to me that when we think it's about us, when we think it's about our ability to do something, when we think it's about our ability to do something that others will appreciate, and we're looking for that outcome, then we approach the process of giving birth to these ideas from a really, really restricted mindset, really restricted idea of what's possible. So it seems to me, it's like the John Lennon thing, every child thinks they're an artist until they're told they're not. Every child has no restrictions, no constrictions. They're just happy to allow it to come through, and they have fun with it, and they play with it, and they delight in it. They're not, they're not that concerned while they're doing it what people think of it. And it seems to me that that is by far the best way of creating, is when we have total freedom of mind and we are connected to life and what life wants to create through us. When we have no judgment about the outcome. Do you agree? Is that?
Yeah.
How does that look to you?
Well spoken, I will say. Yeah, it's For me, like you said, it's not like cultivating something, like trying to get into a specific state of mind in order to be creative. Because in my mind, that would mean that it's not already there. So it doesn't make sense to try to make something cultivated or harvested, whatever you want to call it, if it's already there. And as you said, kids are incredible creative. They make up different games, they play with their friends, they have a lot of toys, but they use the same toy in different ways. And on the when they're playing, they are so creative in their way of playing together and how they take on roles. And it seems like when we get older, we get more caught up in our thinking. And I don't know if this is all, it sounded like this is also your experience, but the difference between where we really feel, oh, I'm very creative in this area of life, but not here, is the amount of fear or anxiety or whatever we have in this area that
Yeah.
seems to somehow block the creative flow. Maybe it's not that we don't get new thinking and ideas in this area, but we are so afraid of what people want to think, or if it's good enough, is it perfect,
Yeah.
will it be a success?
Yeah, exactly. I was just thinking, I haven't done it for a while, but I used to do an exercise when I was doing, when I was working with businesses to kind of illustrate just how much thinking we have. What I would do is I put a piece of paper, A4 piece of paper, on the chairs before the people came in. They'd sit on the chair, and I'd say, right, the first thing we do is take your piece of paper, turn to the person next to you, and spend 5 minutes drawing their face. Okay. And you've never seen anything like it. People are so frightened. It takes them so long to even start because they're so worried about getting it right and about upsetting the person who's sitting next to them if they don't know them, and then so they go through that, and they go through the pain of having to draw this person next to them, and I sort of say to them, so how did that feel? And terrible, that was an awful exercise, that's a horrible thing to do. And then I have a little bit of video that I play them of some 4-year-old kids at a primary school in the UK who get to do the same exercise, and they can't. They delight in it so much. Having the chance to do this, and they had to do it with some of their teachers, and they had to do it with some of the parents or whatever. That's what the video was about.
Hmm.
But they were coming up with all sorts of drawings that were really, some of them were really abstract, but they did not care one jot about what people thought. They just got so lost in the process of doing it, in the joy of doing it, in the passion of drawing. And I think that's what we miss. I think that's what we miss is, even when we're doing something that's not, that we're not good at, we can still get, when we're engaged with something without having so much thinking about it, without having so much worry about the outcome and what people are going to think, we can get lost in it, we can really get passionate about something, and to the point where time just disappears. When you get to do something, and then you find you've been doing it for hours, and you think you've been doing it for minutes because you're just so involved in it.
Mm.
I think that's possible with anything for us. It's only the thought of being judged, and the thought of judging our own work and comparing it to other people, and that stops us enjoying the full range of creativity that we have. And that creativity is really natural. It's really, it's what we are. It's how we express ourselves. And the criteria we have in our head is whether it's good or bad, whether it's right or wrong. And all that criteria is just thought. That's made up. What we think of as good and bad is made up. And I think on a deeper level, what happens is when we become an adult, like you say,
Mm.
yeah, what you say, when we kind of take on this conditioning that the world passes on to us about what is good and bad, and wrong and right, what is good art and bad art. When we take on that conditioning, we become attached to the good or bad, the right and wrong. We see ourselves as being separate instead of being one, one consciousness. We see ourselves as being separate from life. And when we see ourselves as being separate, we have to protect ourselves. When we see ourselves as being small and on our own, there's a feeling of we need to protect ourselves, and we need to try to control life so that we don't feel hurt or embarrassed, because we see ourselves as being small and separate. And I think that's what happens with creativity. We make the mistake that we somehow need to protect ourselves from judgment and criticism. And whatever we do, it has to be acceptable by a certain group of people, because that gives us some kind of self-esteem. But when we understand that can never be true, that's in the world of thought, that's in the world of illusion. What we're here to do is just create. That's before thought. That's who we truly are. Everything else is just the game. When we're allowed to just create for the sake of it, to just allow life to create through us, we get an idea to, oh, today I'd like to paint this, or today I'd like to create a project, or I'd like to create a holiday. Or when we do it without these restrictions, these fears, this lack of freedom, we just get the joy of creating. We just get the joy of being who we are. Just get the joy of being in that, engaged in the act of creating something from nothing for no other reason than being creating. That is when the best stuff comes out. Whether people like it or not. That's that freedom. And I think this is just me, but I think it's the same as, when we're talking, people get a sense of when we're talking from that place of who we really are. That really lands with you. I think it's the same with, you want to talk about art, I think when people experience something that comes from that place, it touches them. They might not know why. And it might not be that it's in the acceptable form of art or music or drama. It might be something totally unusual. But if it comes from that place of freedom and abandon and connection to life, I think people recognize that in their energy. I'll tell you a story. So there's a lady called Elizabeth Gilbert who wrote a book. Oh, I can't remember what the book was now. But she told a story about flamenco dancers in Spain, and she was saying that when flamenco dancers do a dance in Spain, the audience has a habit, when they see a really good performance, they all shout "Ole!" Have you heard that? And they say, "Ole, ole!" Yeah. Well, apparently that goes back hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years, back to, I think it was the Middle East, where they used to have street performers doing all sorts of cultural dances, and they would get really so engaged. They would get so engaged in the performance. They would really put their heart and soul into it, that they would lose the fact that there was an audience there. They were just totally immersed in it. And what the audience would do is that they would clap and they would shout Allah. And she was explaining that their shouting of the name Allah was their way of saying, we see God in you. We see God in that performance. We can see how God is creating through you. I thought that was really cool. But that's how I see it. That's how I think of it, is that when we are in that place, no matter how good we are at something or bad we are at something, when we get lost in the act of creation, we are being who we are. And God is involved, life is involved. And people recognize that. Whether they know that or not, they recognize that it resonates with people. it touches people, and they somehow go away from the performance or the piece of art. They go away from it being uplifted. And I think that's what's on offer. That's what's on the table when we don't have any barriers, any ideas of how things should be, and we just get lost in whatever it is we're doing. We express ourselves in a way that we don't do in any other way. We express ourselves more deeply. We express life more deeply through us, and people resonate with that. That's what we want, isn't it? You know?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's coming to you?
Yeah, I'm thinking like it's not that long ago that I thought that creativity was in the form of something in the physical world, and it was only a small amount of people, like people who write books or people in the art, musicians. Only these kind of people were creative. But as I understand, you also say it's not the creative part of life is not in what we see with our eyes. It's before the creation in the physical world. It's the infinite pool of the formless thought. So it's also before we have the idea in our head.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
for me, that if we see that our experience of something right now, there's sometimes if we're writing a book or a blog, or we have to find a solution for something, sometimes we don't have it in the moment. And if we think that what we experience right now is the only experience we can have, then we are blocked. I think we will be blocked off from a new experience, new ideas, new thoughts around the subject we're looking at. But if we know that the experience, the thought we have right now is only one out of a billion or infinite amount of possibilities, well, then we don't have to worry that much, and we can open up. Um, do you remember the wonder exercise we did at Super Coach?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
And I found it to be really creative in the way that you open your mind up in a direction. Can you say something about that exercise and why you chose to do it at Supercoach?
Yeah, I think that exercise for me is it's a really good demonstration of how we're constantly insight and ideas are constantly bubbling up in us. You know, we tend to think of insights as being something that we have to wait for. You know, we have to kind of look at our watch and say, right, okay, so when's the next one going to come along? And I need to get quiet and I need to listen, and but the exercise really is designed so that you can get a sense of when we're in a place where we're not focused on a problem, we're not focused on having to solve it here and now, when we can, like you say, when we can point our consciousness in the direction of just wondering about something, just reflecting on it, not thinking about it, not trying to sort it out. When we can just look at, softly reflecting on something, then it's incredible the difference in the number of ideas that come into our heads, and the different possibilities that arise. So in the wandering exercise, what happens is one person comes with an issue, they spend a certain amount of time talking about it, and then there are two other people that sit there and listen to the guy talking about the issue. And while they're doing it, once he's finished, they begin to wonder about the issue. They don't try to solve the problem. They're just speaking what comes up in their heads for them, and it might be relevant, it might not be relevant to what he said. They're just literally just saying whatever comes up into their heads in a reflection, not a thinking way. And while they're doing that, the person who has the issue is listening in to what they're saying. And then the person listening in hears them throwing all these reflections out, and he's not judging them. He's not trying to get them to solve the problem. But what happens is, when people are just wondering and they're open to wisdom, that's the key. When we're thinking about something, when we're desperate to solve a problem and we're trying to brainstorm something, we're doing it from a place of our personal mind. We're doing it at a place from our experience of life, our database of what we know. Well, the wandering exercise frees us of all that. We don't have to solve the problem. We don't have to have an outcome. All we have to do is just articulate whatever comes to us in the moment. And that has a different feel to it. That has a lightness to it, and it has a freedom to it. And it's wisdom speaking through us. So then what happens is, in the process, is the person listening in, listening to these comments, listening to this articulation, is then in the same space, and they're hearing their wisdom playing out. They're hearing what life wants to give them in order for them to move forward, without desperately needing to do anything. Life then begins to just whisper possibilities and ideas from that space of freedom, not a space of contraction, but a space of freedom and a space of creativity. So I did that exercise myself. The first time I did it, no, actually I was doing it for a group, and I was demonstrating, doing it with some people, and I was trying to find, in the moment that morning, I found out that my son needed to get back to university, and he was like 3 hours drive away, and he didn't drive, and I wasn't in the country. There was no one in the family that was available to do it. So I just said to these guys, look, this is what's happened this morning. I'm just trying to think of a solution, you know. And I can't remember what they said now, but within about 30 seconds, being in that place, in that creative frame of mind, a solution came to me that I could, because Sam didn't drive, because he was learning to drive, it would be possible for me to ask his driving instructor to put all of Sam's stuff in his car, like computers and stuff, and he could allow Sam to drive the 3 hours to his university. So Sam would get some practice driving. It would be part of a lesson for him, but he would also be able to move all his stuff, which is what he wanted to do. And that came to me within 30 seconds. And that the idea had never come to me before. I'd never joined those two things, getting Sam to university and giving him experience at driving. It never come to me. But that was what was possible, you know. That was the creative force moving through me when I was in that space. And the guys who were wondering, they were saying some really cool stuff, but they didn't come up with the answer. But they were just in that space with me. It's such a cool exercise. I've done it with people who have had the same problem for 30 years that have found a solution, creative solution, within, you know, seconds. It's such a cool thing to do.
Are they wondering about their own issue?
They were wondering about my issue.
Yeah, but afterwards you talked about you've been with people.
Oh, yeah. I mean, yeah. So yeah, everybody gets to do it in turn. And I say that pretty much every group I've done it with, there has been some major insights, sometimes about things that they've been stuck on for years. And it's because, you know, when we say, right, okay, what's your issue? We have to, you know, we're trying hard to think about it. We're trying to focus on it. And when we're trying to talk about our issue, we get even more, you know, sort of lost in the rabbit hole of thinking about it. The thing about people wondering and kind of being in that space is that it then takes you out of that, you know, that really kind of, I need to sort this out of it, and allows you the freedom mind to allow wisdom to come and give us the answer. It's such a cool exercise. So it doesn't necessarily, you know, the exercise isn't to prove that you need 2 more people to do some wondering. It just proves that we, you know, when we're in a state of mind that is focused on a problem and an issue, and we're so desperate to get it sorted out, it's not the best place to find the answer. You know, to think about something, to focus on an issue, we need to do more wondering. We need to do more reflecting. We need to have less pressure. We give ourselves freedom of mind by doing that, and that is when we hear the wisdom. It's when we hear the insight.
Thank you, Stef.
Thank you, Esben.
It's been great.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for letting me go on and on and on. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
you were a good talker.
I'm sorry. Oh yeah, talk too much
Well,
sometimes.
hopefully, I bet people will get something out of it if they can get out of their personal thinking.
Yeah, about all my thinking, about all my talking. Yeah.
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 Oh my God, he's talking so much.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, my friend. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Yeah, thank you, Steph. I really enjoyed it, and I will
Right.
be uploading it in the next few days.
Okay.
Um, and attaching your email, because that's the only way people can find you,
Okay.
right?
Okay. Yeah, it is. I'm a secret.
Yeah, your secret treasure.
Thank you for that. That's very kind of you. Yeah.